Coming up on iOS today, Rosemary, Orchard, and I take you on a tour of iOS 16 because it's here, and so are our new iPhones. Stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is iOS Today, episode 620, recorded Tuesday, September 20th, 2022, touring iOS 16 and the new iPhone 14. This episode of iOS Today is brought to you by 8 Sleep. Good sleep is the ultimate game changer, and the pod is the ultimate sleep machine. Go to 8sleep.com/iOS to check out the pod and save $150 at checkout. 8 Sleep currently ships within the USA, Canada, the UK, and select countries in the EU and Australia. Welcome back to iOS Today, the show where we talk all things iOS, iPadOS, watchOS, tvOS, HomePodOS, OS, etc., etc., etc. It is the show where we love to talk about the different platforms that Apple has so that you can make the most of those platforms on those devices you buy from the company. I am one of your hosts, Mikah Sargent.
And I have a precious here with me, Mikah, because this one's purple. But hi, I'm Rosemary Orchard. Yes, I re-dyed my hair to match my iPhone. That's what I do in life apparently now.
I love it. I love it, Rosemary. And I will tell you, I'm curious how you're feeling because you do not have. Wait, do you have the larger of the two? Do you have the Max or do you have the standard?
No, I just have the Pro. I find personally for me the Max is a little too large and I struggle to hold it comfortably. And I do use things like the MagSafe pop socket, or this is the Pop Wallet Plus, which help me hold on to things because I'm quite clumsy. But even with that, I find the Max is just too big and it ends up not fitting in some of my bags, let alone non-existent pockets in my clothing. So I went Pro on my iPhone, which shows up, it almost looks black in some of the light, actually, which is ironic because my hair is showing up as super purple. But it's amazingly purple. I love this. I love it so much.
It's a really good purple. But the reason I was asking is because I saw that you got the iPhone 14 Pro clear case. And I actually got that case as well for my Pro Max. And I put it on because I wanted to show off the deep purple. And it on the sides of it is, as you grab it, it's kind of creaky and sort of makes this, it has this unpleasant feeling as you're holding it and grasping it, where it's kind of like, it's almost as if it's just a very, 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 very tiny bit too big at the base of the case. And so there's this room on all of the sides where as you're grabbing it, it kind of presses in to the phone. And that causes the ridges that are kind of on the front to brush up against the sides of the phone. And so it doesn't feel secure. I didn't like how it felt like it wasn't a good fit. So I ended up switching to, this is the forest green. So I did still get some green going. And it's got this, you can still see the purple here. So like this little purple and green kind of going. And I like it. I'm sad though, because I wanted to rock that deep purple while still maintaining a case. And so I'm curious, the reason why I wanted to ask you is because you've got the smaller of the two. Does that one have a better fit? Have you experienced any of that creakiness I was talking about?
I have not experienced any of the creakiness, but there is something that occurs to me that might be part of the cause of this. So if you look at the bottom of the case of the new iPhone cases, and I know this is specifically on the clear one, but I believe it is on the leather and the silicone as well, they don't go all the way across with little cutouts in there for the speakers and the lightning port. It just ends. And I wonder if that contributes to it, but I've not had that. I feel that mine's quite secure. The corners are the edges are very rounded, so it almost feels a little slippery when I go to pick it up. But that's partly just me adjusting to picking up the new iPhone. And yesterday, when it slipped out of my hand, fortunately onto the sofa, it was because I was juggling between my iPhone 14 Pro, my dad's new 13 Pro, which was my 13 Pro until I got this one, and then my mum's new 12 Pro and her 11 Pro. So we've been doing the annual iPhone swap in the family, trading all the devices down. And my mum said that she wanted to take my dad's one, and my dad wanted mine. So they've gone off on holiday today with brand new setup iPhones for them, restored from backups, and they've got new cases on and everything, but we all had the same case, and it was very confusing if you sort of just glanced at it from the front. When like the difference is, of course, always on display. That was my trick to figure out which one was which.
Yeah, that does get a little difficult. And people had asked too, will the 13 cases fit the new iPhone? If you've got the Pro or the Pro Max, the size of the squircle on the back of the phone, that rounded, well, I guess it's more of a rounded rectangle than really a squircle, but it is bigger than you had before, and also the lenses stick out a little bit more, and so you will find that these new cases account for that in a way that the ones previous to that didn't. And I have seen, I think that as we are going to get to talking about iOS 16, but we did want to talk about some of the stuff with the new iPhone, and I think one of the big things we can do here is talk about some of the early reactions, responses, questions, etc., that folks have gotten or that we may have seen. And I did notice that some folks had issues where they've got some sort of wireless charger. An example would be like this Nomad charger. And Nomad is a sponsor, not on the current episode, but they are a sponsor of the network, and I just want to note that. And because of how far out and now a little bit farther down the new iPhone camera comes, there is some issue in some cases. I haven't tried it with this one, so I don't know if this is one example of that, but some issue with folks being able to charge their devices. So that's something to be mindful of. If you've got something like the Apple MagSafe Charger, where it's essentially just the puck that you can thwack onto the back of the device, you shouldn't have an issue there. But something that's a little bit more purpose-built, you may run into some problems.
Well, the classic one of this, of course, is the MagSafe Duo, which we already discovered last year wasn't, or was a little bit of a tricky fit with the 13. It's even more of a tricky fit with the 14, I'm sad to report. I actually gave my MagSafe Duo to my mom. And of course, because she's now got the 12 Pro, that works perfectly for her. It worked with the 11 Pro as well, just as a Qi charger, but you have to position it right. Like the whole thing with the wireless chargers, where if you don't put it on there just right, then it never charges and you wake up with a pancake phone, which is not fun. But I did try this and it works. Like you can get it on there, but you do have to like position it right, because otherwise it's not going to suction on and magnetize into the right location. So double check. But the good news is, folks, is if you've got a 14 Pro case, it will fit on a 13 or 12 Pro, because the bigger camera bump is not so much of a problem when you go down, because of course you've just got some extra space around the sides. It's not going to be a perfect fit, but if you accidentally got a 14 case instead of a 13 one, then it should still be all right.
Yeah, and in fact, over the weekend, my colleague Leo Laporte and I were on the radio show, and we're talking about our new iPhones. He got one as well. He got a gold one, and he was rocking his current wallet case that he has with the new phone, and it didn't quite fit. The LiDAR sensor was a little bit covered, and one of the lenses was a little bit sort of blocked on the edge, but because the new one's on the way, but he wanted to have a case for it in the meantime. And so that was how he was kind of doing things in the meantime. And it worked okay. But again, you are better off, I think, getting a case that is made to fit your iPhone in particular. Now, typically we would talk about these things during the news section, but in the interest of continuing to kind of talk about some of the stuff to be aware of when you're moving to a new iPhone, I did want to mention there is an issue that some folks have been experiencing, and I want to clear up some confusion or concern, because you may hear, if you've got one of the new iPhones, you may hear about the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max models, an issue where if you launch Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok or some other third-party video and photo capturing applications, you may hear about this camera rattling that is going around. And so what's happening here is and it's not happening with Apple's built-in camera app. So what's happening here is when you are launching one of those third-party apps, there's some sort of issue in the firmware that is messing with the optical image stabilization that is built into the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max cameras. Optical image stabilization, for folks who don't know, is a physical bit of engineering magic where a lens is kind of placed into the center of an outer area, and it is able to move freely within that area. And different types of optical image stabilization have different methods of doing so, but one of those is a sort of magnetic approach. And essentially what it allows is for that lens to almost stay this is a funny example, but I think a great metaphor for this. If you've ever been around a chicken and you've picked up the chicken and you move the chicken, its head tends to stay in place as the rest of its body moves around. And that is how the lens is working on the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max camera, and on previous cameras that have optical image stabilization. So the lens is meant to stay still, so that way whenever you're taking video, it's not jostling about. So there's some sort of issue where these apps are not properly communicating with the camera, and it causes that optical image stabilization to go wild. And so the lens is inside going bouncing around inside of its sort of area, and that causes the audible sound of rattling as the lens moves about as it's not supposed to. It also, of course, then affects the quality of the image or the video because it is the lens is not staying still as it needs to. So here is what I will say. I think that it is worth launching one of these apps to see if your phone happens to be affected by it. But the second that you hear an ongoing rattle, then you should leave the app. You don't want to continue to go into the apps, because if you continue to go into the apps, you could actually physically damage the optical image stabilization in your phone. So be mindful and careful of that. The other thing is, so I will say that I tested this with mine. Mine does not have this issue. Interestingly, Apple says that there will be a firmware fix that's coming out to deal with this problem, hopefully within the next week, or within the following week. And what I find interesting is it's only affecting some models, not all of them. So it's interesting that a firmware fix is able to solve this, but I guess we'll find out. With all of that said, this is my last note on this, and then I'm curious, Rosemary, if you have anything that you want to add, but it is that you should not be confused upon launching one of these apps and hearing an initial sort of click sound, because the cameras inside of these new phones are so advanced that it's kind of like when you activate a camera like a DSLR or a device that's like a purpose-built camera. You will hear a little as kind of things get kicking off and starting. And so I thought, oh no, it's the rattle. But then it didn't continue to do that after that first one, but it's just the camera initializing that first time. You may hear that as you are using your phone. So be mindful of all of that. There is a fix coming. Rosemary, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, of course, don't forget, you can take a photo with the regular camera app, and then you can open it inside of Instagram or whatever and add whatever effects over the top of that you want to add. It's not the same as using, there are some great camera apps out there for doing stop motion and things like that. It's not the same, but fortunately, Apple are working on this and they will have something out pretty soon. So don't panic. And don't break your iPhone, please, folks, especially not a brand new one. I have no idea what would happen in that case. Apple might well replace it / fix it for you, or they might not. I'm not sure. And I don't really think you want to find out because you're going to be waiting a while for a new one if they do have to replace it. So fingers crossed, the firmware update ships pretty soon. And I do have a note, actually. Sven in the chat room has just reminded me that the buttons have moved. Of course, the buttons on the side of your devices has actually moved a bit between the different iPhone versions. So he got an iPhone 14 Pro case and put it on a 12 Pro, and it didn't line up. So that is something to be aware of. But as a temporary placeholder where you're waiting for the right case to arrive, that could absolutely work as a, as something to tide you over.
We'll take a quick break and then we'll come back with some more about the iPhone and iOS 16. In particular, now we'll talk about iOS 16. But I do want to tell you about 8 Sleep, who are bringing you this episode of iOS Today. We know, because I will constantly preach it, that good sleep is the ultimate game changer. And it turns out the pod is the ultimate sleep machine. Consistent good sleep. This is what's amazing. It can help reduce the likelihood of serious health issues. It can decrease the risk of heart disease. It can lower blood pressure, and it can even reduce the risk of Alzheimer's. Yet still more than 30% of Americans out there, 30% of us, are struggling with sleep, and feeling hot at night is one of the main causes of poor sleep. And this is what's amazing about where we are in sleep science is we have an understanding of what causes, in some ways, what causes poor sleep, or some of the things that cause poor sleep. And one of those leading factors is the temperature of your body at night. I used to have so many issues with sleeping hot. I would go to bed and I would wake up in the middle of the night a couple of times, just absolutely hot. I don't know why, but my body, my brain, I guess, needs me to be under the covers for me to be able to feel comfortable to fall asleep. So I'm in this eternal struggle of needing to be under the covers, but at the same time wishing that I wasn't, because it caused me to get hot. And then 8 Sleep came along and solved all of my problems with the Pod 2 Pro cover that they sent my way. Now I can fall asleep in record time, faster than ever before, because of that 8 Sleep Pod 2 Pro cover. And you can too. 8 Sleep offers the only sleep technology that dynamically cools and heats, for some of you who feel like you sleep too cool, each side of the bed to maintain the optimal sleeping temperature for what your body needs. It pairs dynamic cooling and heating with biometric tracking. Super cool to constantly have those measurements. You can add the pod cover to any mattress, as I did, and start sleeping as cool as 55 degrees Fahrenheit or as hot as 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And here is the result. Clinical data shows that 8 Sleep users experience up to 19% increase in recovery, up to 32% improvement in sleep quality, and up to 34% more deep sleep. With more deep sleep, it leaves you confident that your mind and body are moving through the restorative sleep stages. Of course, those are vital to physical recovery, to hormone regulation, and to mental clarity and mental health. Even better, 8 Sleep recently launched the next generation of the pod, and boy, have I been eyeballing this one. The new Pod 3 enables more accurate sleep and health tracking because they've doubled the amount of sensors inside, so you get the best sleep experience on Earth. The pod, it's not magic, but yeah, I have to agree, it certainly feels like it. Go to 8sleep.com/iOS to start sleeping cool this summer and even into the fall, and save $150 at checkout on the pod. 8 Sleep currently ships within the USA, Canada, the UK, and select countries in the EU and Australia. Again, that URL, head there and change your life. It literally can. It can change your life. 8sleep.com/iOS. I want you all to experience the amazingness that is thermoregulation at night for sleep. Goodness gracious, does it make all the difference? All right, back from the break. Let us get back to the show. Thank you, 8 Sleep. And let's talk about moving to a new phone. Yes, we went through the process of transferring to new phones. Rosemary, you were doing the shuffle with all of your family at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about your experience. I'll tell you about mine.
Yeah, so I don't know if this was a mistake or if this was a test for the show. I'm going to go with it was a test for the show. And I went to the Apple store to pick up my iPhone, and I started transferring stuff in store. And I've got an eSIM that moved over really smoothly, and that I was very fortunate about that. I did see some reports on Twitter about people having to activate their eSIM twice, and it just worked the second time, and they didn't do anything differently. But folks don't seem to have had a problem with that. And so then I tried doing the direct transfer with from iPhone to iPhone that it said would take about 20 minutes. And I thought, okay, that's great. I have 2 hours of parking here, and I'm going to go get some sushi afterwards. I can wait for 20 minutes and have a browse around, picked up a new MagSafe cable for my MacBook and things like that. And it did not take 20 minutes. It took considerably longer than 20 minutes to do this. And in the end, I ended up leaving the Apple Store and the Wi-Fi and just going because I was going to be there for ages. The one thing that did actually trick it into properly working, because when it reboots after you've done things and starts loading up, and then it says restoring, that just got stuck of estimating time remaining for ages. And I popped a MagSafe battery out of my backpack and put it on the back of the phone, and at that point it suddenly went, oh wait, I can figure out how to do this. This isn't so hard. But without that power source, it was really not happy with me. So when it came to transferring my family's iPhones over, I used a good old lightning cable, and I plugged the iPhones into a MacBook, backed them up, did an encrypted backup, and then I just restored the backup to the new device. And that worked really, really well. This worked especially well for my parents because both of them use the music collection on my dad's MacBook as their music source. Even though we're part of the Apple One program and they have Apple Music, they still like to sync everything over from my dad's MacBook. So 11,000 tracks had to sync to each iPhone. So that's 22,000 tracks that had to sync around for folks who are counting at home. But it worked really, really well. And it was not that slow to do at all. I was very impressed. Transferring the Apple Watches went really smoothly. My eSIM for my Apple Watch transferred over too. And that was great because my Apple Watch has only just arrived today. So I actually haven't even set the Series 8 up yet. But I may be getting an Ultra there. But fortunately, mine seems to have gone really smoothly. I would definitely recommend if you have a MacBook at home, just plug it in, do an encrypted backup and restore it. If you don't need to just immediately grab your device and go, that's going to be a really easy way to, get everything transferred over. And then, of course, once you've done that, you do want to go through and open up things like your password manager and your banking apps, two-factor authentication apps, and things like that before you wipe your old iPhone. Because otherwise, if you need a banking app to verify your banking app, which both my parents did and I did as well, then you're going to be a little bit stuffed. If you don't have the old device, you might have to call them and talk to a human, which could involve sitting on the phone on hold for a long time if you're not careful. So, so I went through both processes, and next time, hopefully I'll be able to get it delivered on launch day, and I can just sit here comfortably at home, device is plugged in, back one up, restore it to the other one, and away I go. What about you, Mikah?
All right. So the day before, so on last Thursday, before the iPhone arrived, I was kind of worried that the eSIM process was going to be bogged down on launch day. So I knew that my phone, if you buy the phone in the US, there's no SIM card. You have to do it eSIM wise. So I took my iPhone 13 and I went into, you can do this very easily in iOS. You go into the settings app, you go into cellular, and if you've got a physical SIM, there's a button that says convert to eSIM. And so I hit that button and it started the process of converting it to an eSIM. Did some processing, connecting to, the network, blah, 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 blah. And then not long after, it said activating, and then it showed up as an eSIM on my device. From that point, I was able to then eject the SIM card tray, take out the SIM that was in there from AT&T. That's the carrier that I use, and pop it into a bag that I keep with all of my old SIMs, just because I don't like to get rid of them. And so it was in there, and the iPhone 13 had the new number. Or rather, the same number, but the new system set up with the eSIM. Now, I did experience a problem where after it had activated and everything was fine, like I had the bars at the top, I turned off my Wi-Fi, so I was just connected to cellular, and it made the connection just fine. But for some reason, for me in my settings, it deregistered my phone number for iMessage and FaceTime. So I had to go back in and select those. And I can't really show this because then it'll show off my phone number, but you launch your settings app, you choose messages, and you will see an option that says iMessage, and then it says send and receive. And if you tap on send and receive, you should see in this menu, at the very least, you should see your iCloud email address. And so it's the account that you use with iCloud. And then you should see your phone number if you're using a phone. On an iPad, it will show your phone number if you're logged in with the same account that you use for your phone. There are two areas within this called you can receive iMessages to and reply from, and then start new conversations from. The top one, the you can receive iMessages to and reply from, is the way that you register these different email addresses and phone number with iMessage, with the iMessage system. The second one is what your phone chooses to do, or what iOS chooses to do when you start a conversation with someone new. And when I went in there, my phone number was not selected in either of those areas. And so I had to tap on them and turn them on. And what's annoying is that is not immediately clear if you're just using your phone as you're using it. If you've got an iMessage address and most of the people that you talk to are iMessage, then you wouldn't even realize necessarily that that's going on until you started a brand new text with someone. But because of the knowledge that we have, then of course I went in to check to make sure everything was set up correctly, and that was the issue. I will say though, when it came time to set up my iPhone 14 Pro Max, I had no issues with transferring the eSIM over. It moved right over. It was fine.
Oh, because I actually had the same thing when I transferred my eSIM. And so I transferred my eSIM and my phone number was not selected. So I've actually got the screen up. I've blanked out all the personal information. So this doesn't really help you all that much, folks. But this is the screen that you're looking for with the you can receive iMessages to and reply from, and then start new conversations from sections. And you can see my Apple ID at the bottom. That's fine. It did actually deselect my phone number. And for both my parents who are on a carrier that does not have eSIM here in the UK, it deselected their phone numbers too, and I had to reactivate those.
Interesting.
So I'm wondering if maybe it was just something was a bit hinky this weekend or something. I'm not sure. Either way, that's definitely something that you should check out when you are setting up your new device. You want to make sure that everything's working, and your messages are a big part of that. You'll probably also want to double check text message forwarding and phone call forwarding as well, the settings for those. That's in the settings app under messages and phone, to make sure that everything is definitely still going to the right places. And so on. And if you have a physical SIM, don't forget to pop that out and put it into the new device. That's something I nearly forgot to do on my dad's phone. And then I went to transfer my mom's SIM to his phone and went, oh yeah, I'll just move that over as well. It's fine. There's a reason why I do their phones at the same time, and it means that I don't miss anything like that, because I'll remember it on one device and then I can pop over and do the other. But of course, I'm fortunate in that both my parents want to upgrade their iPhones as well. Not everybody has to upgrade 3 iPhones at the same time every year. That can get a little complicated, but I'm glad that you got it all figured out. Now, let's talk about some of the first things that we'll see, that folks will see when they switch over to iOS 16. One of the main ones is the lock screen. This is, of course, the new feature that allows you to customize your lock screen in more ways than you ever have been able to before. Instead of it just being kind of a wallpaper that you can choose, you can set all sorts of stuff. And when my partner made the switch from iOS 15 to iOS 16, did the update, he did have one issue that I wanted to alert everyone about, so that you are aware. So I had been running iOS 16 for quite a while in beta on my phone, and so I had already made a bunch of different lock screens, and we'll talk about those in a second, and I was able to switch between them. But what I didn't realize, I hadn't paid attention to the fact whenever I first set it up, that if you have lock screens of the old style in your on your phone, when you choose Add New to add a new lock screen, it actually kind of resets that whole area and will take away
that lock screen that you had in the first place, because it is sort of swapping out the old system for the new system. So if you don't mess with it at all, then your lock screen will stay the same. You won't be able to add widgets and all of the fun new stuff that you can do. So it will support that old style lock screen as long as you don't choose to actually create a new style of lock screen. But it's just something to be mindful of. Like if you have it set a specific way, or there's a specific photo that you that you use for your lock screen, you may sort of take a screenshot or something to just remember what it is, how you want it to look, how you had cropped it or what have you, so that whenever you choose add new to create a new lock screen, you can find that photo wherever it happens to be in your library and, get it just as you want. So just being mindful of that. I think anytime somebody sees something disappear that they had in the first place, that can be a little disconcerting and can lead to some concern. So it is helpful to be mindful of the fact that will go away and return in a new way after that.
Yes. Yeah. And for folks who are interested, I can just quickly show you. So what I've done, I'll just exit this. If you just tap and hold on your home screen and then you get to go into the customize option, you can see if you've already set some up, that you've got multiples perhaps, and you can swipe between them. And if you've tied any of them to a focus mode, then at the bottom, you'll see that there's a little icon, which is the icon of your focus mode, and the name of your focus mode. And if not, then there'll be a link plus focus, and then you can tap on that and choose your focus mode. Because this, for me, is one of the things that I love the most. I can have a different wallpaper and lock screen for, sleep mode, work mode, podcasting. This is the one that I'm currently using, and other things, so that I have the information that is, most useful to me at that time. And if I choose if I choose a home screen, it's actually changed my focus mode as well. That may not be obvious necessarily to you, but it's certainly something that is quite nice if that is a specific, focus mode or a lock screen for a focus mode. Then, when you switch to it, it makes sense that your focus mode would switch too. So that's another way that you can trigger that. That's something that caught me out, actually, Mikah, the other day. I switched my wallpaper switched my lock screen because I was showing somebody, and then I was like, why am I in my fitness focus mode? Like, what happened here? Like, did I drive past my ballet studio or something and that triggered it? No, that's not right. And and I realized it was because I changed my lock screen. But it's really nice, and I'm really glad that we can have, especially the custom data, actually, the above the time, that to me has been incredibly useful, being able to have that show up and see useful information to me. And also with the always on screen, I can actually do this now. I've locked my iPhone and it's dimmed it on screen for anybody who's watching the video. And so if I tap it and wake it up, then it gets brighter. And then when I relock it, it gets dimmer. And so you actually know now on the show if my iPhone is locked or not.
Absolutely. Yeah, I need to I've got to update my phone frame, because this is an iPhone 14, but the frame has still got the, what do we call it? The static peninsula. But yes, I'll tap and hold, and then I'll choose customize. And then you have the option to add a filter to the background if you want to. So there's duotone, color wash. Oh, I kind of like color wash here. And you can make adjustments to it by tapping the three dots for the style that you want to have in the background. This, of course, is a shot of San Francisco, I believe from Coit Tower. And so we will choose this cool kind of blue color. And then each of these areas are adjustable. I can add all sorts of widgets. Apollo has widgets, Calendar has widgets, Carrot has loads of different widgets you can add, parcel, weather, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so each of these can be switched out. And then if I tap on the time, I can switch between fonts there. So I think I'm going to use that one for the font. And then you can choose to change the color of the font that's on screen, either by giving it a sort of color of its own, or the first option helps to blend it in with the background. So that's something to be mindful of. That first one has to do with how you blend it in. And then you can also change the numbering system, if it's Arabic Indic, or if it's Devanagari, so that obviously if you read time those ways, you're able to. And then these widgets down at the bottom are also independently adjustable. You can have, I believe it's up to 4 of the small square widgets, or you can have 2 of the larger rectangular widgets, or you can have sort of a mix of both, where I've got 2 of the square widgets and 1 of the rectangular widgets. And these are, it's important to note, these are, is it right aligned? Here, sorry. Oh no, I guess I thought that they aligned.
The widgets are now justified. So originally the widgets were left aligned when the lock screens first came out, which I kind of hated. And now they've decided to justify them by putting the spacing in between to spread it out, which is quite nice, so that you actually get a more distributed view of your content, which is much easier.
I love that so much more. And I'll add back air quality index, I think is what I had there. And so the other thing that I'll show you is that when I tap done, this is important for folks to understand, it shows what's called set as wallpaper pair. And what this does is it gives you what you have on your lock screen as your home screen background as well. And if I choose customize home screen, I can go in and I can keep it as it is, where it's actually that photo that I took before with the color effect that they added to it. I can just choose a color as my background. I can choose a gradient as my background, or I could go all the way into my Photos app and choose something independent of any of that. And I love that they give you the option to either blur or unblur that background. I like to turn on blur because it keeps the background from standing out too much in front of the icons. And now that I've got this, when I swipe up, the background is what it was before. It's just that now it's got a nice blur to it. And I like sliding back and forth between the two and sort of seeing that subtle blur come back and forth on the photo. So yes, that's how you customize the lock screen on the iPhone 14. And yes, this lock screen is tied to my work mode. So that will make an adjustment. Throwback wallpaper here with the clownfish. And then these ones are not tied to any focus modes, but just photos of my dogs. I love, whenever you first set up your phone, this is another good tip. When you first set up your phone, you will see a few suggestions in your lock screen settings for options that you can choose. And they will do some fun stuff with the photos where the text is kind of lightly obscured by whatever's in the photo. But be mindful that as your phone loads in your photos library, it will start to find more that make sense, that look good, that work for these lock screens. So it's always worth checking back from time to time by tapping that blue plus icon down at the bottom right to see what else that iOS suggests for you to have as your lock screen, because there are lots of different options out there. Both the ones, as I said, that are sort of just basically included, and then suggestions for some really fun ones. So yes, that is how you go about setting up your phone's lock screen. Up next, we have even more to talk about with setting up for iPhone, the new iPhone and iOS 16. And we will talk about that in just a moment. More for the iPhone 14 and iOS 16. All right, Rosemary, anything else that you would like to talk about regarding the move to a new iPhone and folks kind of getting settled into iOS 16?
Well, the one thing I would like to note is some of the things that you did have downloaded on a previous device will not be automatically downloaded on a new device. So, for example, photos will be one of the things that are not prioritized to be downloaded first, like your apps and your data will come first. And the other thing that I just remembered, and I've now completely blanked on, is something that we were just talking about. But either way, the photos in particular will definitely take a little while to download. Oh, right, that was it. If you are looking for an app and you are waiting for something to download, I don't happen to have an app that's waiting to download, but I can kind of show you. If you tap and hold on the app icon, then in the download options, there's a prioritized download button. this is going to be your best friend. If there's a particular app that you want or need soon, then just use the prioritize button, and that will then get that over to you a little bit faster because it puts it at the top of the queue. So don't forget that you can take advantage of that. However you're restoring your apps, it will prioritize the ones that you choose first. So that's a pretty nice trick.
That is a very good tip. Yes, I end up making sure to do that. I think Apple does have a little bit of smarts in terms of which ones it prioritizes automatically. So it knows like my dock apps should be downloaded. But outside of that, I always want Audible downloaded as quickly as possible. I should mention they are a sponsor on the network, but they're also constantly running in my ears. And so I always end up prioritizing that as a download as well to make sure it's there and ready for me as soon as I want it.
Yes.
Other
things
quick
like your
tips.
music and books in those apps won't actually be downloaded necessarily automatically first. Like my music, I had to wait until everything else was downloaded before that sort of really started trickling through. And even today, I was playing a playlist in the car and it got to a song and it got stuck for that moment, and then it went and jumped onto the next song, even though I could see the previous song on screen. So that's definitely worth remembering. But you can also cancel a download. If you see that, for example, I have 1Password 8 and 7 downloading, I just canceled the 1Password 7 download because I only wanted 1Password 8. I just hadn't deleted it yet. So yeah, good luck with your new iPhones, folks. There's plenty of fun things to enjoy there.
Absolutely. All right. Any last things we'll mention? Of course, this is the magic of iOS today, is that we will have plenty of episodes to talk about all the new features, especially as folks are starting to use them more and ask questions about them. And we find out as we go kind of what seems to be easiest for folks, what seems to be more difficult, and what folks are interested in learning more about. But any other honorable mentions before we move on to the news?
I think I should just mention, Mikah, don't forget you can edit a message and undo your send now. So if I send Mikah something and then I go, oh no, I've accidentally spelt Mikah with a C instead of a K, something that might happen because I do have both Mikahs in my phone book. I've got another Mikah as well, I'm afraid, Mikah. But of course,
I'm hurt.
You're the special K. You're the special K, Mikah, in the best of ways. And so I can then go and edit that, which is really nice. So, feel free to have a play with that. Just remember, of course, folks can see what you originally sent. So don't send anything to your boss that you wouldn't want them to read in the first place.
Yeah, that is a very good tip. It's good to have that feature. I did it kind of jokingly not too long ago as a test to see kind of the difference between the two. And yeah, it's very easy to see how things are edited. But it is nice that now that many people are updating, I think I was talking with Jason Snell recently, and he just had a typo. And so he was able to fix that typo as we were talking. And so it's just kind of nice to have that. All right. Yeah. Again, we will talk about loads more with iOS 16 with the new iPhones with future episodes. But we only have so much time in a day, and so we need to move on to the news. Some quick things. First, the iFixit has done a teardown of the non-Pro iPhone 14 and has discovered that it is actually a bit more repairable than it used to be. The display is much easier to replace because of the way that it has been designed. According to iFixit, Apple, quote, has completely redesigned the internals of the iPhone 14 to make it easier to repair. You can't tell really from the outside, but when you dig in, it is pretty impressive what they've done to make it much easier for folks to repair.
Yeah. So it actually opens from the front and the back now. And the previous iPhone only opened, I believe it was from the front. And that was quite difficult, especially with the static peninsula, the notch, for folks who haven't heard it called the static peninsula before. Because, of course, now on our lovely new iPhones, at least on the Pro models, we have the dynamic island. So the static peninsula is, of course, the logical name for the old notch. But yeah, I'm really pleased to see that it's more repairable, especially with Apple having the self-service option now, which, fingers crossed, if you do decide to take part of, that you actually get all of the parts in time, unlike when Mikah ordered it to try and fix his iPhone.
Oof.
So yeah, it's a bit of a shame that you didn't get a chance to try it on a 14. On the other hand, I'm quite glad that you haven't yet had a chance to try it on a 14. There would be something especially heartbreaking about breaking your brand new iPhone on launch day.
That would be, I would not prefer for that to happen. So I'm glad that it did not. Absolutely. So outside of that, also, we have the folks, many of you out there are upgrading to iOS 16 according to lots of different, I think I've seen this from multiple sort of services that look into adoption rates. And I'm not surprised to see that this is the case.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see. I know Christian, who's the developer of Apollo, which is a really great Reddit app, said that the use of iOS 14 has pretty much entirely disappeared overnight. And the iOS 16 adoption rate is absolutely bonkers. It's gone really, really fast. So for folks who are going, wait, my phone hasn't actually said iOS 16 is available, check in the settings, general software updates, and then look at the bottom of your screen. And because there is an update for iOS 15.7, Apple's not forcing you onto 16 yet. That will come. Don't worry about it. But in the meantime, you can upgrade yourself if you haven't already done so. I'm sure if you're listening to the show, you've already done it. But maybe you've got a friend or a family member who's not seeing your edited messages quite the way that you'd like, and you can help them upgrade a bit faster if you want to. And
then, last but not least, I saw this story. Logitech may have released some information they weren't supposed to. What's going on there, Rosemary?
Yeah, so Apple has a special partnership with Logitech and Belkin and a few other accessory makers. Logitech is one of them because they have the Logitech Crayon, which is the alternative to the Apple Pencil that's designed for the education market. It's designed to be cheaper. It pairs and charges differently to the original Apple Pencil. If you remember, folks, the original Apple Pencil, you stick it in the side of your iPad and have a very dodgy, easy to break thing while you were charging your Apple Pencil. The Logitech Crayon, on the other hand, has a lightning port in it where you could just plug in a lightning cable at the top to charge it. And so, they've got a special partnership with Apple. And on the Logitech Crayon page, Logitech accidentally listed 2 unreleased models as being compatible with it. So the iPad Pro 12.9-inch 6th generation coming soon, and the 11-inch 4th generation coming soon. So we're going to see what happens here. But I have a feeling, Mikah, I don't know, maybe it's my spidey sense. I'm not sure. I've been getting my Halloween costume ready for this year. But I'm feeling like next month there is going to be an Apple event. I don't know, I'm getting a vibe here of some kind, possibly.
Yeah.
Crystal ball, anybody got a crystal? I've got a can of Coke, that'll do. There we go, I can just look into that. And yep, I think there's going to be an iPad event next month. Funny about that.
Yeah, I definitely think we will see an iPhone event. And I think with that iPhone event, iPad event, and maybe some new Macs announced at this event, but we'll see. All right, it is time to move on to Shortcuts Corner, so play that funky music. It's time for Shortcuts Corner, the part of the show where you write in with your Shortcuts Corner requests, and Rosemary Orchard, your Shortcuts expert, provides a response. In this week's Shortcuts Corner, I think, Rosemary, you have some tips for iOS 16.
I do. I have some tips and a sample shortcut of iOS 16 goodness ready for you. And I've got a bonus app cap that I'm sneaking into the segment of the show that I didn't tell Mikah about. So I'm just going all rogue. But one of the things that I wanted to tell people about is there's a cool new feature in Maps for parking your car, which, Mikah, we talked about this when iOS 16 was announced, and you said your partner doesn't like using the Bluetooth in the car, which means that they don't have the parked car option. And I suggested maybe sticking an NFC tag on the dashboard so you can set the location of your parked car. But one of the things that I wanted to do was to give myself the option to really easily add details to the parked car location, because when you park your car, you can add details. You can add a note and a picture. And so what you can actually do in shortcuts is there's a shortcut action for setting details of your parked car where you can add notes and an image. And so what I have done is I've constructed a little shortcut, and you're going to have to modify this one, folks. It's not going to come completely 100% out of the box. But what I'm doing is this is a shortcut, and you can use it in an automation action with the run shortcut. But what this does is it gets your current location, okay? And I've just, for today's episode, I've said, hey, if the county, which is well, it's very similar to US counties. The larger geographic region that I'm in is Wiltshire. Then just stop this, okay? Because I don't want to update the details of my parked car when I'm at home. You know, I think I can figure out where my car is. I have a designated parking space. So obviously this is a little overblown, but you could use various other details of your location. You could specify, hey, if the latitude is this or longitude, or you could do something simpler like a zip code or a postcode or, the name of your location, your street, your town, whatever. So I'm just saying, hey, if I'm at home, then don't bother with this. But otherwise, get the location of my parked car because I use CarPlay, so I already have the location. And then use a choose from menu to say, hey, do you want to add a picture? And if I say yes, then it will ask me to take a photo with the back camera of my phone, and it'll pop me into the preview mode. Okay, so it's not just going to immediately snap a picture with my iPhone like pointing at the floor or something. It's actually going to like get me to prop it up and take a photo. And then I use this action for set the details of the parked car with an ask each time in the notes, so I can type something in. And this is really useful if you parked in, say, a multi-story car park and you need to know that you're parked on level 6 or something, then you can add these details very easily. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm getting the location of the car so that I don't have to change it, because the idea is, I may have already taken a picture, I may not want to add a picture. I can add this as I'm walking away from the car, and it's not going to set it to the wrong location for me because it's reusing that location. So this one is going to be in the show notes. You are going to want to modify that but then all you need to do is import that shortcut, create an automation, and use whatever trigger you like. It might be when you disconnect from Bluetooth, in which case you'll have to confirm that you want to run the shortcut, which is not quite so nice. It could be an NFC tag. Those are really handy to stick, like on your dashboard or something. Or it could be when you disconnect from CarPlay. Then you want to do that. So there's some options there for you, but whatever it is that you do, I'll just use the CarPlay. I'll pop back and change that to disconnect for folks. Then you just need the run shortcut, and you can just run this and add some details to your car so that you know where you've parked it. You could even limit this to just certain locations. So you could say, hey, if I'm at Disney, then ask me to do this, but otherwise don't bother, because you always take a picture when you're at Disney. So yeah, you'll just need to turn off ask before running if you can, if that's an option. And then you get asked to add some details to your parked car, so you're not going to lose where your car is anymore, which for some folks, including myself occasionally, can genuinely be a little bit of a problem. But there we go. So that's one of the things that you can do. But I mean, Apple's kind of gone a little bit all out this version of iOS, and they've added so many new actions. I can't even remember all of them. But one of the things that they've started doing is giving you the ability to do things like open a specific tab in a certain application, like the clock app. So I can open a tab, and if I just add this to my shortcut, then I can say, hey, I want to go to the world clock page, or I want to go to the alarm page or the timer page, which, especially if, like on my home screen, I have a Safari button in the bottom left, and it's purple. This is a custom Safari button, which always opens DuckDuckGo. So when I tap it, it just goes straight to DuckDuckGo for me. And this means that I don't end up landing on whatever page I was on previously and getting distracted. But if you want to do a custom button like that just opens your alarms, let's say you put on your sleep home screen, then you can easily do that. So, that's just some of the new actions. But one of the things that they've added is full support for every focus mode. So you can filter various applications. All the applications are able to set this up to be filtered for your focus mode. So you can say, okay, I want to set my calendar filter for my work mode, and I'm going to have, these calendars in there. And that would be it. But then you can actually turn this on or off as well. So you can turn on and off your focus mode filters, or you can just toggle them, which flips it between on and off. And you can also clear your calendar focus filter, or whichever focus filter. So lots of applications have these focus filters. So Drafts has already added their focus filter. Agenda has added a whole bunch of new shortcuts actions, including focus filters. And Mikah, I don't know if you're seeing the little one that is at the top of my screen here. This is brand new in iOS 16.1. It's not with everyone just yet. You're able to get your current focus as well. So you can check when you're running a shortcut, or you will shortly be able to check when you're running a shortcut what you can see. And so, yeah, all of the focus mode filters are really handy because you will be able to actually customize this and update it. But there's also, a number of other new actions, including file actions and many, many more, giving us all of the awesome new features that we would really like to have. The other thing is Mail has updated with specific open mailbox actions. So you can add a custom home screen button, which takes you to a specific mailbox. There's also a new search in mail action where you can search for specific text, which could be really helpful as part of a series of project shortcuts. For example, if you've got a project that you do lots of things with, or you create shortcuts for projects, then you can have it find email related to that. There's also some other things built in. There is Notes is the big one. If you like Notes, you can do everything in Notes. If you want to do it in Notes and you think, I don't know, does this feature exist in Notes? Take a leaf out of their shortcuts and just take a look and see what you can do. You can delete notes, you can pin notes, you can find notes, you can change settings of the Notes application. You can add tags to them and create tags and delete tags and open tags, and all of the things. There is just so much that you can do here. So I would definitely encourage you, if you've looked for an action before and you weren't able to find it, take another look. Maybe it's here now because iOS has added so many new actions. It is, quite frankly, amazing to see what you can do now. Shortcuts, of course, has got some new shortcuts actions for shortcuts, specifically opening certain folders. Again, custom home screen button for a folder of your shortcuts would be quite nice. And there's also deleting shortcuts, as well as the opening and running and getting now, and creating as well. But where you can really have some fun is on your lock screen. So what you can do is you can't add, unfortunately, a specific shortcuts widget to your lock screen, but you can add a number of widgets from other apps that are related to shortcuts. So Pushcut, full disclaimer, I am part of the team behind the development of this, has added the support for their custom widgets, as has Launcher. Launcher has the ability to run a custom action. It looks like that one I accidentally nuked when I was trying to speed up my restore so I could leave the Apple Store. And then there is another bonus one, which I would like to mention, which is LockFlow. And Mac Stories has got a great review of this, but it's a free app. It can import all of your shortcuts, and then it can put them on the home screen of your iPhone or the lock screen of your iPhone so that you can run them. And this is just a really lovely option to be able to just quickly run a shortcut at any time. Now, I do actually have the app installed, and I did want to take a moment to mention, hey, LockFlow is not showing up here. This is an iOS 15 bug, folks. It's still around. If you are looking for a widget, be that on your lock screen or anywhere else, and you don't see it, reboot your device, and then it will come back, or it will appear. So if you're missing a widget, like Launcher or something on your lock screen, then you will be able to find it after you reboot, unless there's another problem, in which case contact the developer. But yeah, there's a lot that you can do with shortcuts in iOS 16, and we've got some good requests coming in from folks, but I wanted to take a moment to show off some of the features. And also, I've been using my parked car shortcut for a little while now, and I'm quite pleased with it. It's been very useful over the last few weeks, so I'm hoping that some other folks will like it too.
I think they will. I think they definitely will. All right, folks, we have just enough time for our app caps, so let's play the music for the app caps and head into that. This is the part of the show where we wear caps atop our head or head coverings atop our head to honor our app and gadget picks of the week. The apps and gadgets we are using that we want to share with all of you and tell you about why we're excited for them. Rosemary Orchard, tell us about the cap atop your head and then tell us about your app or gadget pick this week.
Well, I feel like the cap atop my head, we've kind of got a feather sync going on here. But the reason for the feathers on my hat, and I'll just see if I can get it a little closer to the camera to show that off to folks. There's also a flower in there. That's because I wore this hat a few weeks ago, but yesterday was Talk Like a Pirate Day. So I felt like I had to bust out the pirate hat again. And so I've added some decorations because, why wouldn't you? A little bit of saving the environment and adding some feathers, which have officially cursed my desk. There is excess feather everywhere. But my app cap for today is built into iOS. Everybody has it. It's for free. And it's one of those little apps that completely falls by the wayside and nobody thinks about until they need it. And that is Magnifier. Now, I'm actually in the settings for the control center because you can make sure that Magnifier is in your control center. That's the last one here at the bottom for me. And that is a really great way to access the app. It's also available just through the home screen on your phone. But once you've got this, you can then open this up and we're going to get to see a little bit of how dirty my keyboard is. But the Magnifier is a really useful app because obviously you can, zoom all the way in. If you've got a 14 Pro, then you've got that, or 13 Pro, you've got that 3 times optical zoom, and it will use all of the lenses. But you can also do things like flip the camera around to use the front, or you can use the macro for a close-up. And so this is going to try and get in there and see any little bits of fluff that might be in my keyboard. I'll switch that back to auto. There's also brightness, where you can adjust and modify the brightness so that you can see. Tell you what, I'll pop the flower on my keyboard because that blends in quite nicely. And you can manually adjust that. There's a little vertical bar in the center to help you guide that back to the right place. And then you can just swipe up. If you tap on the sun, then you'll go back to it. There's also the different filters that you can add, which can be really helpful if, for example, you have color blindness or you just struggle to see contrast between certain colors. Then you can add a filter over the top. So this is the yellow and black. There's also yellow on blue, white on blue, etc., so that you can adjust that as needed. And there is the torch button that's built into this, so you can see now the detail of the fabric on the flower here, which is quite useful. And there is also a detection mode, which I didn't realize existed until a little while ago, but this can be really useful because you can use it for detecting people, detecting doors, and also image description. So it will do its best to describe images and so on. I'm just going to turn that off because I actually wanted to talk about one little button right here at the bottom, and that looks like a camera button, but it isn't. Well, it is because I've kind of just taken a picture. And, I'm holding my iPhone up by my face. It's no longer pointing at the flower. It's pointing at my hair. So you would see some detail of my hair if it were on, but I've frozen the image. And that's what you can do with the little camera button there at the bottom. And this can be really useful if you're trying to see something and you it's really difficult to get the camera right. And then you're like, well, I can get the camera right, but now I can't see it. Tap that little button there. It doesn't save it to your camera roll. Okay, this is the great part. It doesn't save it to your camera roll, but it will save it. It will just freeze it on screen. You've got a little share button at the top so that you can use that. And then you can also do a multi-photo mode. Okay, so you can take pictures from multiple angles if you're trying to see something. This can be really useful if, I don't know, say you've got a small injury or something and you're just trying to assess it more accurately. Then you can do a multi-view so that you'll be able to see the multiple different images of something. Obviously, I'm taking a picture of a hair clip here rather than something like that. And then you can use plus at any point to add more images to that. And then you can tap end when you're done and it won't save those images and it goes back to the single image mode when you're done. There's also some settings where you can have activities. So you can customize your settings so that you can save a group of settings if there's a particular combination, for example, of filters and brightness that you find work really well for you, or a particular scenario that you might be in on a regular basis, you can save that. And honestly, the Magnifier is such a great app. Apple has so many pages of documentation on this on their website. It is unbelievable. But if you are looking for something to help you see, don't download something from the App Store. Try the built-in Magnifier first, because it is a seriously impressive tool that I think everybody should just know exists, even if they really need to use it themselves. I caught something under my nail the other day and I was struggling to see it, and I was like, hang on a minute, I've got a magnifying glass in my iPhone that's got an amazing camera in it. Let's see what this is. And I was able to see it and get it out. It was just a teeny splinter that fortunately was just caught between my nail and my finger. It wasn't actually in my skin. So I'm glad I was able to get rid of that. And it's all thanks to the Magnifier, which is one of my favorite iOS features that's built in there.
Nice. I am wearing a gray Tyrolean hat, and this is sometimes referred to as an alpine hat, but it is originally from Tyrol. And so it's got the ropes, and it's got the fun little brush thing on the side that's a little bit feather-like, and I feel like I'm ready to go yodel in the Alps, and I feel very cool because of that. The gadget that I'm talking about today is actually a new one that is now out. The ship dates are out by like 2 or 3 weeks. When Apple announced the new AirPods Pro, they announced that the AirPods Pro would have, I don't have them, I'm just showing standard AirPods Pro because those don't come out until this Friday, that there was a lanyard loop on the side. It's kind of like the two holes on the side with a little bit of a catch in between so that you can slide in the loop part of a lanyard and hold it. Or, as I've shown before on my Nomad case, which Nomad is a sponsor on the network, there is the little lanyard loop on the side of the Nomad case. And I have in hand the Incase lanyard. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because it's not just a standard lanyard where you slide it in and lock it in place, but it also has a fun little feature where the plastic part that exists between the attachment loop that goes onto the lanyard loop and the larger lanyard loop that you would put around your hand or maybe around some fingers, this plastic attachment has a little notch built into it so that you can actually take the larger lanyard loop that would go around your hand and lock it inside of that area in between. So I can pull it, and then it makes a much smaller little loop there. And so this is great for attaching your AirPods to a bag, or maybe even inside of your backpack to a loop inside. Or if you just want to carry it on a couple of fingers, then you can also do that very easily. And then after you're done, it can slide back out and you're good to go. It's not locked in, unlike if I were to take the whole case and slide it through that lanyard, where then it's a little bit harder to undo after that. With that little space in between, it makes it much easier to attach and detach the lanyard loop. So yeah, I'm excited to get the new AirPods Pro so that I can attach this new Incase lanyard loop. But as I said, the last time I checked on the website, dates were pushed out until like mid-October for shipping of the Incase lanyard. So it seems like some folks really hopped on this rather quickly to get it. Available for $12.95 in the US, so $13, which is, I think, a little pricey for a lanyard. But like I said, I like that functionality that it has, where it's not just a standard lanyard. There's a little bit more to it.
Yeah. For folks who are curious, I've just checked on the Apple Store. They also sell the Incase Reform Sport Case for the AirPods, which includes this. And that's
nice.
Available in pink and black. And those are $30 by the looks of it, like $12.95 or $30 or $29.95 for just the lanyard or the lanyard in case. I personally am going to be getting one of these. I'm probably going to get with the case because I have Tom Bin bags with little O-rings inside them. So I'm going to be able to use this to securely attach my AirPods to the O-ring so that I will easily be able to grab them from the top of my bag without having to go fishing somewhere, because they always sink right to the bottom, right? That's the worst thing about the AirPods. They're so tiny, it's great, but they go right to the bottom of my backpack. So I like attaching them to an O-ring. So this will solve my problem nicely.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why I was so excited about having a lanyard in the first place, is because they do sink right to the bottom of the bag. Folks, with that, we have reached the end of this episode of iOS Today. You can check out iOS Today in many ways, but you may be wondering how you can send us questions or feedback or pay the pet tax or any number of those kinds of things. You can send those to iostoday@twit.tv. That is the email where we are checking in on your feedback, your questions, etc., and we'll make sure they make their way into the show. We record the show live every Tuesday at about 9 a.m. Pacific, which is 12 p.m. Eastern. You can tune in live by going to twit.tv/live, but there's a better way if you aren't interested, at least, in watching us record the show live. The better way is by subscribing to or following the show in your podcast application or service of choice. By going to twit.tv/iOS, you can become a subscriber or follower. You can choose the audio version of the show or the video version of the show, and there are lots of different services listed so that you are picking the one that works best for you, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, etc. That is where you go, twit.tv/iOS, to check that out. I should also mention that if you would like to get all of the show and none of the ads or those extra things, well, there's a way to do that. For $7 a month or $84 a year, you can join Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit. When you join the show at Club Twit, you will get every single show ad-free. So it's just all that content, just the show straight through. You also get access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra stuff you won't find anywhere else. After the show, before the show, outtakes, behind the scenes, and some of the events that we do as part of Club Twit also make their way there. And you also get access to the Club Twit Discord server. Something that's called a server sounds kind of overwhelming or confusing or perplexing, and I promise you it's nothing like that. It is a place that you can go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members. It's like a community and of instant chat ability, and there are lots of great folks in there. A great place to ask questions and get help or share your nerdiness. All of that's available for $7 a month, $84 a year, twit.tv/clubtwit. But it doesn't stop there. Now you can also get access to some really great shows, including the Untitled Linux Show, my show, which publishes every Thursday, called Hands on Mac, where I have a shorter form show talking about specific features, apps, all sorts of stuff, tips and tricks regarding any of your Apple devices. It's called Hands on Mac because it was primarily at first a Mac show, but I have expanded upon that to make it all of Apple's devices. So if you're looking for kind of quick tips and tricks, that's a great place to go. And I've gotten some great feedback thus far from folks who tune in and listen every week. And so thank you for that. And if you are an iPhone or iOS user who's also on Windows, well, there's a great show from Paul Thurrott that you get as part of your Club Twit subscription called Hands on Windows. That is a great place to learn tips, tricks, and all sorts of stuff regarding Windows. Rosemary Orchard, if folks want to follow you online and keep up with the great work you are doing, where should they go to do so?
Well, the best place to go is rosemaryorchard.com, which has links to all the things I do on the internet, including a link back to this podcast and, of course, my other podcasts. And, of course, you can also find me on Twitter at RosemaryOrchard and in the Club Twit Discord, where I'm always hanging out and waiting to see what awesome questions and tips our amazing listeners have for us. What about you, Mikah?
Well, you can find me at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network, or head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. So those are your main means of getting in touch or following along. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope that you got a lot out of this episode as we took a tour of iOS 16 and the new iPhone 14. Rosemary Orchard and I will be back next week with even more. Until then, though, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Goodbye.
Bye, folks.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket? Join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.